Come on in. Come on in. Come on in. Okay, can you see me? Ah, yeah, that's better. Come on in. Come on in. We're going to have some lights, camera, and action. I have some information for you. You're going to want to hear this story. Live to you from Myrtle Beach. It's Chevy Cool Lady. Live, live, live. Come on in. Come on in, guys. Come on in. Come on in. All right. All right. Today we're going to be talking about a very sad case that has come back up in the news. I'm here to spread awareness for Amber Berbiglia, who was murdered here in Myrtle Beach, May 23rd, 2013. Come on in. We're going to be raising awareness. Not only that, this is a cold case. This is unsolved by Horry County and Myrtle Beach Police, so we need your help. Come on in, and let me tell you this very tragic story. Amber Berbiglia. I'll just give it a few minutes. Grab you a coffee. You're not going to want to miss this story. I love you guys. I'm Chevy Cool Lady. For those of you who have not tuned into my channel, this is a safe place to discuss ideas that are outside the box. We talk about true crime. We talk about raising awareness against DV and abuse. We are the voice for the voiceless. We talk about Christian issues, and we talk about true crime. I love you guys. If this is your first time visit and sounds like a good fit for you, then please like and subscribe. And if you are a returning sub, mwah, love you. You are the coolest. You are the most awesome people. You have been supporting me with so many beautiful little notes. I just love you guys. Thank you so much for allowing me this time in your life. Come on in. Come on in. We're going to have a live. We're going to discuss a case that Nancy Grace has just posted recently, an update on Amber Berbiglia, slain in Myrtle Beach, 23 years old, a gorgeous co-ed, just as pretty as you can imagine. She was working real hard. She had been studying in London and moved back to Myrtle Beach. She's from New York. She was studying to be a costume designer. She was taking some classes here at Coastal, working at a little restaurant called Overtime in North Myrtle Beach. And here in the small town just outside of Myrtle Beach, Little River, she was found May 13th, lying next to her car, on the outside of her car, under an overpass. Her car is still running, beaten so severely that the first responders thought she had been shot in the face. It turned out she was beaten. She had 2 skull fractures that killed her. 23 years old. She had just gone to pay her electric bill. She was on her way back home. She was planning to be married in just a few weeks as soon as she graduated. While studying in London, she had met a beautiful guy that meant the world to her, and they had plans to get married and move back to London and have this great life together. But this was cut short by some type of monster. Let me tell you exactly what happened. Come on in. Come on in. Grab you a coffee. This is Chevy Cool Lady. Welcome. All right. Amber Berbiglia. Amber Berbiglia. Cold case, Myrtle Beach. Unsolved by the Horry LE. The family needs your help. The family needs you to investigate, and they need me to investigate. And they need awareness, because it's been 13 years. Well, it happened in 2013, so 11 years, right? No answer. They don't know who did it. The perpetrator or perpetrators are still on the loose, as if Myrtle Beach isn't dangerous enough. There's murderers out there who killed this young girl. Oh, my heart breaks for the family, guys. 23 years old, with her whole life ahead of her, snuffed short by some monster, a monster or monsters. And Myrtle Beach police have not solved the case. In fact, they're very hush hush, according to private investigators who have looked into it. Why are they still haven't released all the evidence? What are they waiting for? Why is this case so closed? Who did this? Was it someone who was known? Is that why? I don't know. Just throwing that out there. Okay, so let me just tell you about her, okay? This is from North Myrtle Beach Live News, okay? WMBF News has uncovered exclusive new details into the murder investigation of Amber Berbiglia. And that was really a farce. That was a line. This happened years ago. And really, there has been no new evidence that I've read about. I haven't seen anything new. This is a case that I don't think was even investigated thoroughly. Let me tell you about it. The 23-year-old was beaten to death back in May of 2013. Her body left under the overpass of Robert Edge Parkway. Detectives and Amber's family have released never before seen surveillance videos of Amber's just before her murder, as well as voice messages that represent the last thing she said. That surveillance video showed that you could see her driving. She went and she paid her electric bill. She got back on I believe on the overpass, and veered off into a kind of abandoned or remote spot. Well, it's not remote in miles from Myrtle Beach. There's not a lot on this road. The road is called Old Sanders. So it's Old Sanders and Robert Edge Parkway, which is a bridge that goes over the waterway that leads from North Myrtle Beach to Little River. So she was found on the Little River side, under the overpass, on a road that it looked like where she was found, there was some type of storage or, metal buildings of some type. And there she was, left on the outside of her car, which was still running, her phone fingertip away from her, just out of reach, beaten so badly that first responders thought she had been shot in the face. Turned out she wasn't. They don't know what she was beaten with. The murder weapon has never been recovered or identified. I'll tell you more about that in just a minute. This has been a nightmare for both her mother and her sister and her best friend. And these three people were interviewed on the Nancy Grace documentary that came on the other day. Did anybody watch that? This is about Amber Berbiglia. Her mother's name is Michelle Robinson, and she said she had just, on the fateful day of May 23rd, had just gotten home from work, heard loud banging on the door, and was like, who is that at my door banging that way? Went to the door, and there the police officers informed her of her daughter's death. Of course, she was in shock. She nearly fainted. She nearly fell out. The police had to grab her arm and help her to a chair, and there she tried to sort out what has been a nightmare for her for the last 11 years. She said she had to call her mother, Amber's grandmother, who was traveling to Pennsylvania, and she was trying to reach her, and she sounded very confused, even looking back at the events that happened. She was in a dazed state. Her sister recalls that she was at work at a busy restaurant on a Friday night and received the call where she almost fainted. In fact, fell onto the floor of where she worked. And of course, people didn't know what was going on. Customers and the people she worked with helped get her to the back door, helped take her home, helped her get to her father, because she was living outside the area of Myrtle Beach at that time. Amber, 23 years old, on a Friday afternoon, between the hours of 3 and 4, about 4 o'clock, a 911 call came through to the Myrtle Beach dispatch stating that there was a female unconscious and unresponsive laying outside her running car under the bridge, the Robert Edge overpass. Her car was still there running. Whoever perpetrated this crime did not drive it off. Neither was this considered a robbery, because her purse, her cell phone, money, everything was still in the car. So here's the theories. The police released a report saying that the surveillance cameras had picked her up around the town, driving across Robert Edge, Grissom Parkway, and veered off to an area that was off camera. She was seen then entering back onto that area about 20 minutes later, and appeared to have a man or a figure, a dark figure, possibly an African-American male. How Myrtle Beach determined that that's who was with her, I don't know, because the mother said she saw those surveillance tapes, and she said it looked like a shadow. She actually said it looked like a shadow and an arm, but what was the arm was indistinguishable. It looked more like a shadow to her. I don't know if the experts saw something different, but they identified that there was a person, possibly an African-American male, in the car with her. So this shadow figure was seen by the police. We don't know who that was. But if there was somebody there, it's probably the person that killed her. Looking back on the case, her sister and mother and her best friend were all interviewed. Her best friend's name was Angie Ritchie. They worked together at a place called Overtime, which was like a sports bar in North Myrtle Beach. She loved her to death. She said when she heard of the news of Amanda's passing, that she was absolutely stunned. She said this girl had the softest heart. She was kind to everybody. She was cheerful, and people just loved her. She said she couldn't even wrap her head around the fact that anybody would do harm to this beautiful girl. She was dazed, and I believe here 11 years later, she is still dazed in a sense over, and certainly misses her best friend. When you waitress or your server, you get close to the people that you work with. It's long hours and hard work, and you find out a lot of people in that industry, because it's a hotbed of emotion. It's at times when it's busy, it's a boiling pot. navigate through, and you get in the weeds, like they say. You get busy and overwhelmed, and you have your little go-to people that help you out, and you help them out, and you get close to people when you're a server. I was a server for many, many years. Too many. There were so many times I got into service and then out of and back into, and every time I thought, oh, I never thought I'd do this again, but I did, because it's quick cash money right in your pocket. You go to work broke, you come home with a pocket full of money. Serving, bartending, hospitality. That was my life for a long time, and that's one reason when I saw her little picture with the white shirt and the little tie, she looked just like a million girls I've known. Just so cute. And I bet she was just as sweet as could be. And she certainly never did anything, and nobody ever does, to deserve such brutal treatment. And I'm trying to make awareness for the fact that these things happen all the time. And when it's not easy to solve, I don't think that the work gets done in a lot of the cases. And in this particular case, and knowing the things that I know about the MVP and the surrounding counties, law enforcement, I don't know if they're overwhelmed or burned out. I don't know what's going on. And I'm sure in a lot of cases they do a good job. And I'm all for the investigators and the police that are taking it seriously and realizing they're dealing with people. They're just not dealing with paperwork and numbers. And, I know it's a hard job, but if that's your job, please do it, because families like Amber's families are dependent on you. Her mother, Michelle Robinson, believes that it was a stranger who did this. She said, if anybody knew Amber, and if there was any kind of problem that they might have, they would have just talked to her and they would have worked it out. Amber was easy to get along with, and she was a good girl. She was planning on having a beautiful life. She was here working and going to school. She had a fiance that she met while she was in school in London, studying to be a costume designer. She must have been very creative and loved beautiful things, because what a great job that would be for somebody like her. And they were planning to get married within weeks. Shortly after she was about to graduate, she was giddy with excitement. Her sister said that it was a true love story. Some theories have surfaced. One theory is perhaps because of the brutal nature, the beating in the face, that psychologically indicates that it was done by somebody familiar with you. And we've seen that in a lot of cases. That something about the face, when the face is distorted or masked, covered, or beaten, brutalized in any way, it's usually somebody who's familiar. It's what they like to call, a personal attack. Because of the amount of passion that was involved in this particular attack, other people looking into it theorized that it was someone she knew. Was it someone she worked with? Who was in the car with her? It was doubtful she picked up some kind of random stranger. People don't really do that these days, especially when you're responsible and, working and that type of thing. She wasn't some kind of, loose woman or something like that. She was a beautiful person. She was a decent person, and she was out paying bills, doing her thing. Did she see somebody? Was she flagged down? I don't know what was on the cell phone. Was that cell phone checked? Because she had pulled off into the neighborhood and was off camera for about 20 minutes. Was that area canvassed? Were those doors knocked on? Did anybody see anything that would lead to apprehension of the killers of Amanda Berbiglia. If anybody saw anything, I do have a number. It's 888 Crime SC. 888 CRIME Crime, South Carolina. There is a $6,000 reward offered for any information leading to the apprehension and conviction of these perpetrators. We talked about her sister Amanda being distraught when she heard this information while she was at work. Her best friend was also at work. They would have worked together had she made it in for her shift that night. Her best friend Angie Ritchie, her sister Amanda, and her mother Michelle Robinson. Their life just hasn't been the same since, and it won't be. When you lose somebody you love, especially when you lose somebody in such a violent way, and then the crime goes unsolved, I can't imagine frustration and fear that they must deal with in the ensuing years. Days away from graduation, her life was cut short. The investigator found her purse with ID, money, her cell phone, everything there. It wasn't a robbery. Co-ed, Amber Berbiglia, only 23 years old. Nancy Grace called in an expert, Barry Hutchinson, who had been in law enforcement for over 26 years, is now a head investigator with a company out of Kansas. Barry Hutchinson. He noted that this is obviously a crime of passion. He proposed perhaps she had a jilted lover, or if not a lover, a friend that wanted more than a friendship and she didn't reciprocate. Someone who felt jilted, who felt jealous, who felt, why not me? Why this guy? Why are you marrying this dude? You could have me, a narcissist, right? We don't know that. It's just a theory. Her sister said they were close. They talked. She would have confided either in her sister or her best friend or her mom. None of them had reason to suspect that Amber had anything going on the side with anybody. It just wasn't a theory that held water. But this still was a very personal attack. As I said, the police ruled out robbery. The victim was found outside her car still running, within an hour of being seen on video. People either go to one of two camps. They feel it was someone familiar to her. She had a large circle of friends. Perhaps one of those friends wanted more than her friendship. We don't know. If anybody knows anything, please call the 888-CRIME-SC. This seems to be a crime of opportunity. It would seem like it would be a romantic interest. I mentioned to you that she was engaged to a man that she met while she was in England. Was it him? Nope. He was actually in Europe and apparently has a rock solid alibi. He's been investigated. Even Nancy Grace said she personally investigated that, and he seems to be completely uninvolved in this crime. There doesn't appear to have been a side lover or anything like that. This is a mystery that has gone without clues. Even the murder weapon has not been identified. The timeline is basically sometime between 3 and 4 p.m. in broad daylight. probably closer to 4 p.m., she was murdered. There's absolutely no way this kind of trauma could have been self-inflicted. She was beaten beyond recognition by at least 2 blows with some blunt object, an unknown object, beaten in the face, in the head. I don't know. Her skull was cracked in 2 areas. Grab you some coffee. It's delicious. All right. Now, this is about all we know. There's been really no updates, no further information. Her plans were beautiful plans. She was said to have a fairy tale type of story unfolding for her. Right now, she was working, or at the time of the incident, she worked at the Australian Grill, which is upscale, nice restaurant. She was going to school here at Coastal, finishing up her classes to become a costume designer. She was on her way to London to live with the man of her dreams, who was cleared and is in no way responsible for the tragedy. She had been seen on video within an hour of her death, and no further information has been released from the Horry County investigators. What's going on with that? Why hasn't more information been even released? People who've tried to look into the case say that it is, it's like hush hush, it's sealed, it's Fort Knox. You're not getting the information, apparently. And I've heard on other cases that they have trouble getting information from Myrtle Beach. What's going on with that? We have the right to freedom of access of public information. So what's going on with that? I don't know. I wanted to make you all aware. I thank you for joining me for this time. JusticeForAmber.org is the website. $6,000 on the table as a reward. Hi, I Spy. This state is just pitiful when it comes to protecting its citizens. I know, I'm scared. I live here. I hope nothing happens. But I know that if it does, I shouldn't probably say, but you kind of have to take matters into your own hands in a sense. I'm not saying do anything illegal, but if something happens to one of mine and they're not being investigated, and I can't find the satisfaction, who knows? Who knows what would happen? It's a tragic situation. My heart goes out to these people, the family of Amber Berbiglia. My heart goes out to the family of Micah Francis and the Francis family, who I still feel have not received answers from nearby Robertson County. I feel they haven't gotten satisfaction from the MVP. Thank you so much, I Spy. I appreciate you. Yeah, I hadn't heard of this case before. I'm doing some more awareness on these type of crimes, both local and spreading awareness on DV and abuse, trying to give everybody some kind of tools to work with. I want it to stop. I want this to stop, and I'm going to do my part to spread awareness of these cases, because a lot of times the media just is not picking up the cases. They don't want the cold cases. They don't want the unsolved murders. They're not pretty little packages. And if, Lord help, if a case is deemed self-unaliving, you won't even hear about it. Really, if it hadn't been for the protesters, the Micah Francis case would have been swept under the rug, which I believe is exactly what John Paul wanted to happen. And it didn't. It didn't, did it? And it's still going on. Wow. We did a case on April Holt a couple days ago, and she was another one I hadn't heard of, but she actually had been very popular. She had been very popular because she was a TikTok influencer, April Holt. But she was one that got brushed off, even though it was a high profile case when it first started. What happened in that case was April Holt was deemed a self-unaliving, which wasn't true. And the mother had, and this was in Tennessee, had to do the digging, had to do the fighting. She found the evidence that was overlooked, and it was simple. In this case, the woman had been strangled by her husband in the bathroom. To conceal his actions, he took a bag and put it over her head, and they duct taped it and left her there for some time, so that if she didn't die immediately, she was sure not to live through that. It was genius. And what made it even worse is he sent his 7-year-old son in the bathroom to discover his mother. That was April Holt. And like I said, her and her husband were celebs on TikTok. But that case, once it received a verdict of self-unaliving, she couldn't get anybody to cover it. She called like 5 or 6 different newscasters, and they wouldn't do anything with it. She tried to get celebs, and this is Tennessee, and not one would pick it up. But she didn't give up. She didn't even give up when she received a gag order telling her she could no longer discuss the case, because she had opened up on TikTok about what was going on with the case. She even got the case reopened in a community board review. She was spreading awareness through TikToks and received a gag order. For 8 years, she wasn't allowed to discuss the case, but she didn't give up. She continued, and she found the evidence because more had been released once it was reopened. And that's when she found the fingerprint. The only set of fingerprints on that bag and duct tape belonged to Donovan Holt, April's husband. She confronted him, got a taped confession, took it to the police. Luckily for her, he collaborated the story when he was apprehended. He had moved to Texas. He was transported back to Tennessee, and he was basically slapped on the wrist with reckless homicide and I think some kind of falsifying information or something like that. It's 3 what I call minor charges instead of the first-degree murder rap that he should have had, with collaborating testimonies and signed confession. But again, the justice system failed that family. She's still fighting. Her daughter's death was in July of 2023. I believe he was apprehended in just February, and I'm not positive about that date. But the case is open again for review to amplify the charges, to move the charges from reckless homicide to both first-degree murder and child endangerment, which should certainly be on that list. That date is October 23rd. It's coming up, so I did want to do that story as well. So y'all pray, please, for these things. Right. And And that's why, even though it was deemed suicide at first, it was overturned to homicide. For hell knows no fury like a woman scorned. Don't try to tell a mother what she knows instinctively, right? You got that right. You got that right. Mamas know. Mamas always know. Mamas always, sometimes you know too much. Sometimes I feel like I wish I didn't know things, but you can't. You can't. You can't brush off a mama when it comes to her daughter being dead or her child. No, it's not going to happen. And thankfully she got that. But that case gives me hope for Micah's case. That ruling was overturned. The sad thing is with Micah's, that so much of the evidence in having a cremation was totally destroyed. It didn't sound like the ME did a very good. It sounded like he just jotted down what he was being told by a certain person. Some of the stuff in Micah's medical exam didn't even make sense. Talking about gummies, and it talked about the Delta 8 gummies, which are CBD anyway. It doesn't even have THC. Where's the addiction in that? That THC isn't addicting anyway, in my opinion, or by any medical journal that I've ever seen. And especially in gummy form, why was that even on there? It was on there because someone was running their mouth, in my opinion. Horrible. Horry County and surrounding areas. That was Roberson County's worse, probably, by all accounts. I've done some videos on Roberson County that I actually had to stop because it was so frustrating and ludicrous, to see the cases that are unsolved in that area as well. But we're gonna go back there. There's 3 ladies in Roberson County whose deaths have been uninvestigated and gone cold, and I'm going to bring them to the surface. I've already began that video. I'm going to be releasing one in just a while today on the Amber Berbiglia case. You can see her beautiful pictures, her face, and her lovely family, her best friend. You can hear what detectives have said, what evidence has been released and not released, and basically we're raising awareness for them as well. Thank you guys for joining me. I love you forever. God bless you, and we'll talk to you tomorrow.